pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll open the meeting up to public comment. Okay, we'll close public comment, and we have several, one presentation this evening, and then our construction management team will do a capital project update. So let's first do the data presentation.
Hello. Well, we finally got some data from the benchmarks. It was some really nice data is coming together. Well, we were working.
Why don't you
I can move it. I can do it.
So the elementary benchmarks, as you know, this is a project that we've been working on for a few years now. And we brought them all together last year for the first run through. We're going to give you some data. We're going to show you where the grade levels start at the beginning, middle, end of the year, and they're summative. Then we also, Jody did some work where she was able to parse out by subgroup some information so that we can tailor some of our professional development and our targeted AIS services for particular students based on subgroups and also academic levels. So you'll see that as we're going through the slide, if the slides come up.
Sorry.
Page down, page up, isn't taking you through it?
It's not taking me through it.
So hit, if you escape and get back out, and then maybe hit F5 to restart the show.
I'll take a second actually while they're trying to get that up, and I know Jody's going to talk about this in the second part of the presentation, but one of the things that we found from these elementary benchmarks is that there is a strong correlation with the New York State assessments. There's still some things that we need to take a look at to see that correlation more truly, but even for the students that did not take New York State assessments, we feel pretty confident in the benchmarks because the students that took the benchmarks and the assessments, it was a very good predictor of where they were going to fall on the New York State assessment. So you're going to see that in a correlation chart after this benchmark presentation. This presentation itself, this piece is really just 6 slides that goes through and talks about each grade level, what the beginning, middle, and end of the year benchmarks were. And we also noticed that in certain grade levels, there was, we're going to have to tweak some of the tests or look at the timeline about when some of the benchmarks are given based on how fast curriculum moves through the year. So Jody, I think going to start with the correlation chart.
We did a correlation. We took all the students who took the New York State exam in the elementary school, and we correlated it with their benchmark scores to see how it came out, how it played out, and it came out really well. Statistically, it came out very well. It's R squared of 0.68, which is almost a 7, and that's a pretty high correlation. So what that means is that we can be confident that we can use the benchmark scores and substitute them in for the state tests. So we can kind of predict how students are going to perform, even though they did not take the state test. This line, the trend line, when you have a perfect trend, all the dots would fall directly on that gray line. And you can see that most of the dots are right around that gray line. You only have a very few outliers here, these dots that are out, off the line quite a bit. And those are kids that, for some reason or another, they scored really low on this and really high on a state exam, or they scored really high on the benchmark and really low on a state exam. But for the most part, the kids pretty much stayed right around that trend line. So it shows a very good correlation. So we were very excited about that.
So as we we're gonna walk through kindergarten through grade 5. The kindergarten slide here shows the progression from the beginning of the year to the final test that the students took at the end of the year. And again, it's not necessarily you're always going to see progression because concepts change as the school year goes on, but we were very excited to see the students did as well as they did with the end of the year. That encompassed everything that they did throughout the year at the 86%. I can click through this, yeah. So now this is where we had her do some more work, and we looked at students by their subgroups, how they would fall on the New York State subgroups. So we took those same subgroups and substituted the data that we got on our benchmarks, and it falls in line with one of the areas that we know at the elementary school is something that we need to focus more on, and this slide, especially in the kindergarten level, shows our Hispanic students who need a little bit more focus. First grade, and you have the whole presentation in front of you, so I'm going to run through these slides a little bit more quickly than you're going to probably want to look at them more closely when you have more time. But basically, we're wanting to see progress throughout the school year, and that's what we're seeing in most grade levels.
So the percentages on top of those bars mean that's the percentage that those students got the answer correct?
Passed.
Yes.
They passed.
They passed.
Is it the average of all of the tests together? So like, where it says 73% under students with disabilities, does that mean that 73% passed, or 73 was
No,
the
it's
average
the
score?
average, you're right, it's the average test.
The average test score,
Right.
That's what I thought.
So again, now we're going to start to see, and Patrick will talk a little bit about this as we move through the grade levels, we're going to start to see some dip in the students with disabilities as concepts become more difficult. Grade 2, there's definitely some upward motion there with final of 87. This clicker's not working from over here. There we go. This slide shows very strong in some of the same subgroups that maybe were showing some deficit levels at the K and the 1 level. But we still want to take a look at those same areas. So if something comes up in kindergarten, we're going to follow that through each grade level to make sure that we're not missing something along the line. Patrick, did you want to jump in now or?
This slide's last.
Okay. Yeah. So 3rd grade, we definitely had a bump there in the winter assessment. And that could be for a multitude of reasons. It could be that maybe the rigor was not as hard on the test. It could also be that the curriculum went faster than when the benchmark was there. Remember, this is the first time giving these benchmarks, so we're making some minor adjustments so that we make sure the curriculum is moving along at the same pace as the assessments that we're giving.
Now, the second slide that you're doing for each grade where it breaks it out by different subgroups, is that a breakout of the final?
Yes, the summative is.
Oh, and we could break it out for all of those tests. And
Yeah, and we have had conversations with
Yeah.
after each of the assessments.
And so again, as we look at our subgroup areas, our students with disabilities in the 3rd grade subgroup was down quite a bit. So that's an area where we need to dig deeper, find the students that took that test, find out what their weaknesses were, and start addressing those on a targeted basis.
Just a question on the data. Can we just back up to that slide?
Sure.
It's very quick. So does the possibility exist that a student could also be in the students with disabilities and the Hispanic realm?
Yes, absolutely. And I should have mentioned that. My
They
apologies.
could be in like
They
4.
could actually be in multiple categories, sorry. And there's the fourth grade benchmarks. Again, a bump in the second one, so we want to take a look at that test and also the alignment of the curriculum with the benchmark that we have set there. But it had the upward trend at the end once this again, the summative is a representation of the whole year. And again, our two areas that we're currently focusing on and within our schools, the Hispanic students and our students with disabilities. Fifth grade started out very strong, so then that makes us take a look at the first benchmark to see if that benchmark was given later we know when the test was, but how much curriculum was covered prior to that benchmark. But again, leading up to that last benchmark at the end. And our two subgroups. And you know, some of those other subgroups we take a look at as well, but as Mr. Bacazzi said, students are represented in multiple categories, and we can parse that information out on a student-by-student basis, and take that also to the New York State data, which you're going to see some of that shortly.
Again, just to show you the correlation. And then,
So if you remember this correlation as we're going into the New York State data, you'll see that we had pretty strong data from our benchmarks, and it correlates very well with our New York State performance. Again, not every student took the New York State performance, but we're pretty confident that what they did on the benchmarks would be representative of what they could do if they took the New York State assessment.
And here's the part, as Joel mentioned, we saw some disparity between our K through 2 results on these summative assessments compared to our 3 through 5. We saw it was a pretty big drop in our 3 through 5 results on some of these. So some of the conversations that we're going to be having are based on some of the strategies that K through 2 are using, and if they're applicable to 3 through 5, be consistent with some of the language that we're using. We also noted that if there's a deficit, it's going to get compounded as you grow, and some of those skills, if you don't have those strong skills in the K through 2, it's going to really come to light in 3rd grade as the skills become much more difficult. And we look at the application of those skills. So as we get to 3rd grade, we see a lot more word problems, a lot more multi-step problems, and then we see, if you look at, we're increasing our specialized reading instruction this year. A lot of those math questions become reading questions at times. So students that have deficits in reading will be struggling in some of those math questions, not because they may have the math skills, but may not be able to apply them. And part of this is with our special ed cabinet, we're going to be looking at these trends and how we can improve our consistency to hopefully raise some of those summative scores for our specifically 3rd through 5 students.
And are you confident we're providing all the accommodations for that population required?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I said before, I think really when you hit 3rd grade, it is a big jump for students, and we do see that with some of those skills that they haven't totally mastered, it can really come to light, and that's where some of that disparity can grow. But we're going to be looking at specifically what some of those K through 2 classes are really doing, where these kids are really scoring pretty high on these summative assessments, and how we can transfer some of those same skills and strategies and language to the 3 through 5 areas.
Now, on the other side of that coin, you're mentioning that the cracks in the early foundation may be what's attributed to 3 through 5. So are you reverse engineering that to find out where those problems may need to be addressed in the K through 2?
Yeah, and those are conversations I think we've been having for a while now too, that sometimes when we look at, we get to 3rd and 4th and 5th grade and we say, all right, students are lacking in this. And then, you know, we're going back and seeing where it's being targeted. So, yeah, it's going vice versa. I think in here we're looking at we're focusing on it the other way just because simply that the results are, the disparity in the results.
any other questions? I have the other presentation. Can I put it up? data based on the 3 through 8 exams. I mean, it's broken up into 3 sections for you. The first section, well, it's not just the 3 through 8, that's the beginning of it, and then the high school is following right after that. It's broken up, the 3 through 8 is broken up into 3 sections. The first one is 3 through 8, district-wide. And then the elementary school, 3 through 5, and then the middle school, 6 through 8. So this is the 3 through 8 testing, and I'll start with the ELA, just so that you have an idea of where we are compared to New York State. In 2016, Highland had 31% proficient in grades 3 through 8. New York State had 38% proficient. And this year, we had 36% proficient, and New York State had 40% proficient. So you can see that we grew the 5%, the state grew 2%, and we're just slowly catching up to them. We're gonna get them next year, I'm sure. These are the subgroups compared to Ulster County. So we've taken all of Ulster County data. Not all data is available to us, so we can't see everything, but they do post the average of Ulster County. We don't know which school is which yet. That won't come out until probably early next year, but we do have the Ulster County averages. So we've taken the subgroups and we've compared ourselves in 3 through 8 ELA to the Ulster County schools. And you can see that we start with all students, go to general education, to students with disability, to not economically disadvantaged, to economically disadvantaged, the Asians, the whites, Black, and Hispanic, which are the subgroups that were identified. And sometimes we're doing better than Ulster County, many times, or we're very close to doing the same as them.
And this is all 3 through 8 tests together?
This is all 3 through 8 right now. This, and when I'm talking about 3 through 8, you are throwing in, there's not that many, but there are several BOE students too that will be added in here because they don't break them out yet. Now, when they start talking about elementary and middle school, they're not talking about the BOE students, they're just talking about their own. Okay, so when you look at a 4-year, actually I should have changed that because I added in a 5-year, because in 2013, that was the last year before the kids started opting out. So the first line in each grade level is 2013, all the students took the test. The following year, they started opting out, so that you could see the trend for those 5 years. And you can see that in 3rd grade, we have a fairly steep upward trend. We have upward trends till you hit 6th grade, 7th grade is equal, and in 8th grade there's a trend. And this is an ELA.
And the other way, just another way to look at this too, as we were talking about and thinking about it, excuse me, just a minute, I'm gonna try and do this without touching the screen. So when we look at our 8th grade for 2017, that would be the 7th graders in 2016, you know, so you can work your way back a little bit without it. It's always hard for me to put that in a visual that makes sense to people, but that is one way to look at it if you're looking at that later.
And those are the same kids, so I like to call that apples to apples rather than apples to oranges. Because when you look at it this way, you're really comparing apples to oranges because every year those students are changing. But when you look at it from this 38%, the next year became 49%, those are the same kids. So we're seeing growth among those groups of kids. So we've just started to really break all this out. We've got a lot of digging and research to do.
Always a challenging year.
And here's math. In 2016, we had a 29% proficiency. 2017, we had a 39% proficiency, 10 percentage points. New York State had a 39 and then a 40. So we grew 10 points and they grew 1. Yay us. This is the average Ulster County compared to the average of Highland. And we are winning in all categories, beating them. We did really well. So you can see that with the exception of the Hispanic group, which we already knew, we have to start focusing on more. We're doing fairly well.
So when you include Ulster County, do you also include Kingston City School District?
I'm assuming it's every county school because it comes directly from the state and they just say Ulster County. They don't tell us anything more than that. This is the math proficiency. This should be 5-year, by the way, because I added in the 2013, since that was the last year where the kids didn't opt out. And this time I had to do some work with the algebra students because in 2013, they did not count the algebra students in with the 8th grade. And then they started counting them in with the 8th grade. So I broke them out into 2 separate categories so you could kind of see with and without the algebra students in there. So we're showing a lot of growth district-wide. And this is where Joel comes in.
So as we start, I think at first glance we want to cheer and be excited, and we do. We want to celebrate the successes that we have, but I cautiously am optimistic, and I said that about 4 years ago. I remember standing over there in that corner, because there's data here that's going to say that we are doing phenomenal, and I think we are. However, it's not a true 100% picture because we have so many students that do not take the test. But if you look at that correlation chart, you'll see that where students landed that took the test and took the benchmarks, we're pretty confident that our scores would be in this ballpark. So if you take a look at 3 through 5, we're the orange line, and we're above Ulster County in every category except down in the smaller subgroups, the black students and the Hispanic students. But we're right in line with the rest of the county there. Again, we're above the line. We love to say that we're doing phenomenal in comparison to the county, but we want to be cautious not to rest on this. We want to continue the work and continue moving forward with the changes that we've put in place. This is ELA, so Teachers College has not been represented yet. So the work the teachers have been doing in the last year are not represented in this slide. So we're hoping that that is going to translate into even larger orange lines in the future. Our math subgroups, this one, the lines are really high in comparison to the county. But again, we're cautiously optimistic that we don't want to rest on what these numbers are telling us. We want to continue the conversations, continue the professional development. We did a lot of work in the last few years with the introduction of a math cabinet and grade level conversations around the data that has been coming out of the work that we've been doing. This is not representative yet of the math benchmarks, because remember, this is 1 year behind. But we did try to correlate it. We tried to pick those same students out to see that it would look, that it would be indicative of where we are as a school. So again, we're pleased here, but again, we're not resting on anything. If you take a look at just the trends from 16 to 17, you'll see that there are gains in every area. 3rd grade ELA from 43 to 48. 4th grade 32 to 40. 5th grade 21 to 30. In math, we went from 42 to 59 in 3rd grade, which is a huge jump. 4th grade 37 to 48. 5th grade 30 to 50. Science, it's the first time I think I've ever seen a drop in science. Now, we could say that that's because we had a large number of kids opt out of that test. But again, we're not going to use that as a reason. We're going to dig into that. We know that the standards are changing, and do our students need more exposure maybe to some of those pre-testing experiments, things of that nature. It's a little bit more difficult with science to parse out some of that data because it doesn't come back as clean, but we have the answer sheets. So those are not ones that get sent off and we don't get back. We have them all. We can start looking through those.
So is this,
Oh.
sorry,
Nope.
is that one similar to kind of like, Sarah pointed out on the other one to look at grade level? You would look.
Yes, so
Yes.
you're looking at,
16 for 3rd grade and 4th grade, be 2017?
Correct.
yes,
Or,
yeah.
yeah, 3rd to 4th and 16,
Yes.
17, okay.
Yes.
And we can,
Okay.
we can put that together for you if you'd like. I've done it in the past, I feel like every time I put it together, people get confused about what.
No, I think you
they're
can
seeing.
see it from here, I
Okay.
just wanna make sure, cause like looking
Yeah.
at, from 30% to 50% for 5th grade for math, seems like a huge jump, but and maybe it's the 37 to 50.
37 to 50.
Is really your comparable
Because it's a
in
different
terms of
group of
student
kids.
groups.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is even when you're comparing cohorts, you're not necessarily, we want to think that we're comparing the same exact kids, but they may have taken the test last year, not taken it this year, or vice versa. So we've had a few of those where they didn't take it last year, but they did take it this year. So what are we doing with this data? I gave you 3 points because I think we've talked about a lot of the things that we're doing, but just to focus that we're going to continue those benchmarks. We're going to make sure that some of those peaks and valleys that we noticed in the data, we're looking at the schedule of when those benchmarks are given, what curriculum is included, also the data meetings that we'll be holding and we have held to identify best practices and determine areas for targeted instruction. That's an ongoing thing and that's never going to come off. Even if we don't put it on the slide, that's going to be conversation and that's going to be work moving forward. Teachers colleges, we implemented that last year. I think our big focus, they're all using it with fidelity at this point. But one thing that we know that we need in those classrooms is complete classroom libraries. Most of the purchases that happened this budget cycle were to create those classroom libraries. We're getting there. So with more leveled material, teachers will have more choice, students will have more choice, and we're hoping that translates into more growth. And then as Patrick mentioned, I think in his earlier slide, the introduction of the Special Education Cabinet to analyze our curricular structures to make sure that just because there's an IEP there doesn't mean students don't get a rigorous learning experience. And we want to make sure that that is the case, K through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12.
Okay. Middle school. Here's our ELA by subgroup, as you've seen in the other cases. You know, it shows where our weaknesses are and where our strengths are compared to Ulster County. So it's data to look at. It's stuff we are analyzing, going through, and looking at, and we'll talk about when I get to the slide about how we're moving forward, what we're doing about some of this. It's nice to say that we're above Ulster County with our students with disabilities, but it's 5%, so there's some work. There's lots of work to do there. All right. I'd love to say that math looked as strong, but clearly by looking at this, it does not. Okay. And we'll talk about some of that in a minute as well. And then the chart here, the same one you saw, Joel just showed. There's an interesting number here to me, because if I'm doing this right, Jody, and tell me if I'm wrong, this 17% is that cohort of 53%. Is that correct? And I know the 53% includes students that took the Regents, but they can't opt out of the Regents, right? So it's just an interesting piece of data to me, that when we have lots of students opting out, and we do in 7th grade, that when they can opt out, that number of proficiency jumps to 53. I'm not sure what that means exactly, but I know, and what we're in our moving ahead, one thing I would like to say about 7th grade, I'm not making any excuse. We're diving into it, we're trying to figure out why that's 17%. But at the same time, you talk to any 7th grade teacher, and that's when our kids, they're no longer elementary kids. They're moving into high school. That's when it gets really difficult. The work changes, the expectations, how you take notes, the work you're expected to do on your own, all changes in 7th grade. Yes, we work to build them up to that, but they don't really know what's hitting them until they get into that year. Right, so that could be some of it, don't know. What are we doing about it? Really what's important. One of the changes we've talked about at length in cabinet and when we developed our local assistance plan this year is we're taking the state data, the kids that took the test, we're targeting our most struggling kids. We're going to make personal phone calls to parents and we're going to invite them all to an after-school academy. 2 8-week sessions run by trained teachers, about 2 hours in length, with a bus transportation at home at the end. And we're going to look at those state tests, the release questions. We're going to identify weaknesses, strengths, and we're going to target what skills they're missing directly from that information. Which we can't really do, we can't target like that in the classroom because we have a curriculum to go through, but that after-school academy will allow us to do that. There'll be a teacher and a teacher aide in each classroom, and we're going to involve some other mindfulness stuff, exercise, food for kids to make sure they're highly engaged. All right? We're also going to really, we've been talking about it for several years, and really then with Sarah's lead this year, really get into the engaged, effective, highly effective, researched teaching strategies that are more engaging of kids in the classroom. We're constantly moving in that direction all the time, but this year we've already done the poverty simulation and we're going to be doing the book study. Then we're going to be engaging in the professional learning communities to talk about those results and what we need to do to improve instruction in the classroom. Improve literacy strategies. We've had a consultant coming into the district regularly over the past couple years. More involvement, targeting literacy, direct literacy strategies in the classroom with just as many teachers as we can. So that when we look at a math word problem, the kids can annotate that word problem and figure out what they're really asking, and then know the skills. So they're not breaking down, they're not missing the math problem because they can't read the word problem. Right? Alignment of curriculum and IEP goals. That's working with the special ed cabinet that was putting together, and that work's being done. And because of the continued question of opting out, we are building, and we have ready to go this year, our math benchmarks. We still have to go through the same correlation that you saw with the elementaries to make sure we're on target with them. But we're going to be utilizing that, and we can then come back and say, are we on target with our kids? More of our kids. And answer that question.
So the targeting that you're looking to do with the after-school academy, that's going to focus on results from the New York State assessments?
It's one of the major pieces we will be looking at, absolutely.
I just think it's something that we should definitely highlight because we have such a high opt-out rate that, in order to get your student, the focus and attention, I mean, this is a very big part of it.
And if I'm not mistaken, the LAP plans require initiatives by the district to increase participation and to, as part of what you have to do as part of your LAP plan, both the elementary school and the middle school. And also, Dan, if I'm not mistaken, the LAP grant that will be received is going to support that after-school academy.
Absolutely, that's coming from that. Yes.
But definitely the opt-out movement has to be addressed in the LAP plan.
Yeah, and I think it should be addressed just even in, the after-school academy in terms of, discussions with parents to make sure it's an important part of making sure that we can get them the help that they need. Thank you.
That was me. There.
I don't apologize, but Mr. Harris had a family medical emergency, so he is not here this evening, but I can talk about the high school, probably not as effectively as he would. But we'll go through some of the Regents scores. First, just to look at our graduation data. As you know, we're good there. It's in a good place. For the most part, we've been pretty even. We were a little bit lower 2008, but for the most part, we've been steadily moving up in the right direction. We believe that the 2013 cohort, which would be last year's graduating class, 2017, should be 96%. That it's not official data yet from New York State, but based on our own numbers, that should be where we are. So our 4-year graduation rate is really good, which means our 5-year graduation rate is also pretty good. We don't have 5-year data for the students that would be in their 5th year right now. But again, we really, overall, we end up having a pretty high graduation rate, especially when you look at 5 years. And with the new Every Student Succeeds Act, the proposal that New York State is sending to, is almost sending to the federal government for approval, both 5 and 6 year graduation rates will be included, we believe, in the accountability measures from a federal standpoint. So this is one area that we want to, of course, continue to make progress. It's not a direction we need to focus as much energy, additional energy. We focus a lot of energy there, but additional. This just breaks down between, of course, you know that almost all students that graduate now need to have a Regents diploma. This gives you a picture of the students. The orange is those students who graduate with the Regents diploma. The green is students who receive the advanced Regents diploma, which means that they have to take more Regents classes and perform at a higher level than the regular Regents exam. There are a few students still who would get the equivalent, what we used to call an RCT diploma. I don't remember the term for it. Do you?
Local.
That's not accurate either anymore.
Exact.
I don't remember what it is, but there's a few students who qualify in that, but very few anymore. So pretty much everyone needs the Regents, but we have a very high level of advanced Regents diplomas as well, which speaks to our college and AP program. Again, because our graduation rate is high, our dropout non-completer numbers are pretty strong. This is the total number of students from each cohort, or from each, well, this would be the graduating year rather than the cohort year. But again, we had kind of a high point there in 2012, but it's been steadily decreasing. We work very hard to keep our students connected to the school, to keep them engaged, and to get them to graduation. It has been a huge focus for us. So this is for students who graduated in 2016-17, so the 2013 cohort. This would be their score on the ELA Regents exam, Common Core ELA Regents exam overall. Again, even breaking down by cohort. Students with disability is our lowest one. That's 88% of our students graduate with their ELA.
So 88% of our students with disabilities had a 65%
Or better.
or better on
The,
their ELA
ELA.
Regents. Okay.
Yes. Our overall proficiency with everybody, again, we hold fairly steady, and that's with the introduction of the Common Core Regents,
Sure.
Common Core English, right about 2010 cohort, right around there. It's been about 4 years. So we're doing well with ELA. Math, students with disabilities, again, it's an area we need to look at and continue to work on. But overall, when we look at the graduation rate, students, in order for the accountability, algebra, geometry, or Algebra 2 can be counted as their math test. So a large percentage of our students hit that accountability level. Or of our students that graduated last year, again, math proficiency. Last year, 94% of our students were proficient in math. And a big part of that, and I don't remember the rest, I think I should probably talk about here. A big part of that is we really work towards the aspirational achievement level, meaning we want our students to hit a level that we hope will make them successful in college. So we have students retaking the exams to get higher scores. So we're not satisfied with just getting the passing mark. We're going to encourage students to continue to take those tests so that they can achieve, so that we hope that they will then do better in college because they have a better foundational understanding of the math concepts. So that when they actually graduate, we have a very high level of students who have hit proficiency. This is the actual Regents data from the last, again, the administration in June of 2017. So the Algebra 1, this is typically taken by 9th graders. We do have some 8th graders. Are the 8th graders included in this, Jody? I know we had that conversation, I don't remember.
Yes, I believe.
So we have one group of 8th graders, usually about 30 students, who take the Algebra 1 Regents exam, and then the rest basically of the 9th graders. So basically a proficiency level of about 78%. That's including levels 3, 4, and 5. A switch for the Regents exams for the 3 through 8 tests. It's a 1 through 4 scale. For Regents exams, it's 1 through 5. So proficiency is level 3 and above. If you look at our trend, and again, this really reflects the work that Peter and the high school staff have done the last few years to encourage students to take that test and get beyond the 65% level, to really work towards that higher goal. So we've done, and again, this is about where the new Common Core Algebra 1 test came in. So we've seen improvement. We have a ways to go. We have work to do, but we're seeing improvement year by year. Geometry, this is one we've struggled with a little bit more the last few years. It's proficiency of 65%. That's not great. We certainly want to see that be higher. We also are a little bit unusual in Ulster County that we really encourage all of our students to take this. This is mainly taken by 10th grade students with a few 9th graders who had taken the 8th grade tests thrown in. We had a real dip last year, but we're starting to see improvement again. I believe 2015 was the first year of the Common Core Geometry, the new test that came through. Sorry, I should have mentioned this before. The number in parentheses is the number of students who took the test in that particular year, or that particular administration. Algebra 2, we do very well. This is when it starts to separate a little bit. So students who are going on, who are definitely on a post-high school education route, continue into Algebra 2. Some students, instead of going into Algebra 2, we really encourage 4 years of math, but some students might go into a statistics class or might go into a couple other options that we have. But we have a very high success rate, and that it's not an easy test. Oops. Oh, that's right. We don't have a trend because this is only the second year, I believe, of the Common Core version of this test. So we just don't have very much data to go on. But traditionally, students do fairly well on this test. And then again, mostly juniors with some sophomores thrown in. ELA, that was ELA this year. I mean, one thing to notice here is our proficiency rate is 92%, and I should have showed it to you on the Algebra 2 slide. This is our level 5. This is the highest level that you can achieve, our mastery level, if you want to call it that. Our students are very successful on this test. We administer the Regents exam in January of their junior year, so they take it early compared to many other places, but that then gives them the opportunity to take the test again in June if they don't do as well. And that's another area where we've really encouraged students, even those students who pass the test, to take it again to see if we can get a higher score for them, so that they need to be able to read and write well to be able to move on into anything. It's not just about being college ready, it's also about being career ready, and being able to do the kinds of reading and thinking and writing that you need to do in all professions. For your trend, again, we weren't starting from very low, but we've seen an increase, and part of that is because we encourage students to not kind of rest on their laurels with just whatever score. We didn't do the trends so much, but we just wanted to show you. Global history, traditionally, of all the Regents exams, this is the most challenging for students. Very often when you look at the scores of other places, this is the one that students don't do so well on. Part of that is because it's the Regents exam covers 9th and 10th grade global history, which is, having been a teacher of that for a long time, it's a lot of history. It's really from the beginning of time to the present. So it's a lot of material. It's a rigorous test, 50 multiple choice questions, 2 essays. That is changing though. This year's 10th graders will be taking what they're calling a transition test that will only be testing the 10th grade material. And it will be a little bit different format for the test. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten tons of information about that from the state, but we're working on it and working through it. But this is exciting for us because even when I was teaching it, we weren't quite at the 85% proficiency level. US history is great. We do a good job with the US history. You know, by the time they get in 11th grade, they've had US history at least 3 times. You know, so, and they live here, so, you know, they picked up some on their own. Not to say we have phenomenal teachers in that program as well, but our students do traditionally do very well in US history. Living environment is also known as biology. This is also our APPR test, our SLO test for the high school. We do a building-wide, and again, traditionally students have done very well. This also will include about 30 students from 8th grade who take the test as their advanced regents in 8th grade. So the rest of that is mainly 9th graders. This just shows you the trend. Again, we stay pretty steady. And variations like this can be just a difference in a test from one year to the next. So it's never the same. Chemistry, again, chemistry is mainly a 10th grade course in Highland, which is a little bit unusual. And most of our students take chemistry. In many schools, it's an 11th grade course, and not as many students will take because you need 2 years of science, but only 1 Regents exam. Physics, again, that separates out a little bit more. Just a few things as we move forward in the high school. We're continuing to really work with our collaboratively taught courses especially across the core areas, and that is our co-teach, where we have a special education teacher and a general education teacher working together, really trying to focus on literacy in those classes in addition to the skills for the specific subject area. We have started, this will be I think the second or third year, where we're offering very specific Regents prep courses after school sessions right before the Regents exam administration, both in January as well as in June, with a very specific schedule. We usually offer 2 sessions after school, and students are encouraged to go to both sessions if they're going to stay for those. But I believe we also did it in the summer. I don't. Bill, did we do? We did review in the summer too, before the August Regents, right? I already mentioned the aspirational performance measures. We're continuing to have conversations about that. Dean was nodding his head. You've had that conversation with people, right, or heard people talking about, okay, you can do better than this, right? Yep. And much like we've talked already about the ELA and math, we're also looking at, you know, what are the connections between scores on ELA and biology, or what are the connections between algebra and biology, which is when most students are taking the same test. You know, can we make some connections? Are there things that we can pull out of there that are going to be common to each that will help us with our instruction across all 4 subject areas? I think that's the end of the formal presentation, and then I just want to reiterate, last week I did the presentation on poverty. Again, all of that, the point of that is to inform the work that we're doing here, to help us support the work that we're doing here. Deborah already mentioned that part of our lab, interestingly enough, we were only cited for the elementary school for our participation rate. We're not sure why we didn't for middle school, but it seems to be a glitch in the state. But part of our plan was how we were going to address the participation rate, and one of those is to look at using, they have a toolkit from New York State that will be working with presenting to the PTAs, as well as sending some letters home about the changes to the New York State test. One of the big ones this year is that it will be 2 days of testing rather than 3 days of testing. So that's a huge, huge shift, and something that many parent groups have been asking for. So we're hoping that talking about that will help. Also, students have unlimited time to take the test, so they don't need to be anxious about finishing the test in a certain amount of time. And of course, we know that those tests are not connected right now to teacher scores, although we still do keep a record of that. But, so we're hoping that, starting out the year talking about that, and then again, closer to the testing season, having another conversation. With that said, I will also say we've already had a couple of letters from both offices opting students out of most things already. So, you know, we're hoping to change the level, but we don't know. But, yeah. Any questions?
Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Sue. I think we all really appreciate that.
Joel, and I'm very pleased when I saw the results in the paper. It's not as comprehensive as this. This is so nice and easy to understand. And it's, you know, I know we have some work to do, but boy, what a turnaround from last year. Thank you very much.
And I think, sorry, Ed.
No, I just had two quick questions.
Sure.
But one being, as far as the opt-out goes, I know we've been relatively passive regarding the opt-out, but when you have letters arriving already in September, is there an attempt to contact these individuals and engage in a one-on-one discussion?
I think that will definitely be part of it, and again, that's part of our thought of trying to go to PTA meetings early in the school year, once they're up and running.
But someone who's clearly, when they're issuing a letter in September, they already have an ideology that I think you might call for a one-on-one discussion or dialogue, that, you know, to have someone, either whether it be the building principal or higher, to actually contact the parents and discuss what, you know, the pros and cons, and what is it they're concerned about, and whether those concerns are being addressed. I think because at this point, it's very strange to be getting opt-outs in September. I mean, you have someone who's almost militant in their commitment to that, and I think if we address that, you know, in a one-on-one, you may shift the flow of
Absolutely. I think we're all pretty committed to doing as much as we can.
And then my second question was just regarding, I noticed that when we talked about we're falling below the state, that was the state mean, or the year average, yeah. Do we have an eye, and of course this, when we say I applaud everything that's going on in a good direction, but do we have an eye to the highest performers, and are we looking for best practices in which districts were in fact, I mean, I understand part of that's going to be socioeconomic, but do we have an eye to the best practices in the highest scoring districts, and what we may be able to glean from that?
Yeah, that's part of what we've been looking at last year. Unfortunately, we can't do it this year yet because the scores haven't been released in that. They haven't been released on an individual basis yet. So once that file's out, then we can once again take a look at that and see where, you know, which ones are performing, especially if it's within or similar economic rate. You know, they have a higher performance, and take a look at them. Our opt-out rate kind of is high compared to a lot of them, so it's a little difficult to compare sometimes.
But your correlation
Yes.
showed that we're, you know, we probably still carry the mark through.
Very much so.
And even those that have a greater socioeconomic, I wonder if we can't find a correlation within, you know, their special needs populations, their lower needs.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
see if we can, again, just look at best practices. I know, and I say, I know there's a lot on the table, but it just seems that we always have to, if we're gonna progress above the state,
Absolutely.
it should be our goal. Those are my two cents.
I just want to thank you guys for, I think that was a great presentation just in terms of data and seeing the big picture, but also focusing down on the little details of it and seeing that we're doing a great job, but there are some details that we just need to continue to focus on. And I think that'll obviously always be the case, and we may see a shift in that, but at least we can actually see that now. So, great job.
And I would like to not only thank our administrators, but of course a huge thank you to our teachers who really have done a lot of work over the last few years. You know, there's been a lot of standards, and we have new changes. The state just approved the next generation ELA and math standards that will not be reflected in the tests until 2021, I believe is the year. So there's a few years for us to get ready, unlike Common Core, which was kind of like, okay, here you go. But you know, they really have been doing continuous work to look at their practice and their curriculum and trying to figure a lot out at one time, because it was ELA, it was math, and now we also have science and social studies. So They really have been working very hard, so I definitely want to give them a huge thank you as well. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, guys. At this point, we'll bring up our construction manager, Lou, to give us an update on the capital project. Lou?
And Lou, you're probably going to need to, do you have a drive?
Yep. I also saved it on the,
Did you say it on here? Okay.
Yeah.
Because we had to close it when we pulled up the others. All right.
great. Hey guys, thanks for having me here to talk about the project some more. I haven't been here for a little while, but what I'd like to do is walk you through where we are today, and then at the end, open it up with some questions. I'm going to talk a little bit about Phase 1A, which is the first scope of work that we went out to bid with. Phase 1B, I'm going to go over the project budget as a whole, big picture, talk about some of the alternates that were selected and some of them that are still out there that you may want to review, and then at the end we have some project photos. Project Phase 1A, key contracting. Bus garage is completed, high school is completed. The middle school scope of work, which was, the plan was this summer to have the windows and door installation completed. We're looking to have that done by October 1st, and that's the window install at the middle school. And then the elementary school, the work was completed. And again, we're talking about Phase 1A, which was a smaller scope of work initially. Phase 1A, site work contractor, Meyer Contracting, completed the bus garage. High school, the last thing that was recently completed was a scoreboard, and they had to come back with and do some caulking and sidewalk work, some punch list things. But right now, they're pretty much completed, and we were also looking to see how the athletic field was gonna turn out this summer, coming into the fall, and right now it's looking good, and I haven't heard any complaints about that, so we're gonna be closing this contractor out pretty soon. Meyer Contracting, they had an electrical contract. We just had the light poles punched out, so we're gonna be closing out that contract as well. Phase 1B1, this is the elementary school project that was awarded. Key Construction Services, their contract to date right now is $1.161 million. Looking to be completed with all of their work by October 7th or October 1st, with the exception of the kitchen equipment, cafeteria, main entrance, office, library, and computer lab. Right now, there's $20,549 left in the allowance that's still available in that contract. Clean air quality, all work has been completed. Awaiting punch list, $23,000 left in our allowance. Pittsfield Pipers, $151,250 is their current contract value. All work has been completed. We used 100% of their allowance when we're doing investigatory work in the kitchen. And there's about $4,000 that'll be coming in change orders from them above and beyond their contract value, and we're doing that final negotiation with them. Hudson Valley Electric, $540,610. We're looking to have them completed with the fire alarm and PA system by the middle of November. And right now, we are still holding $10,000 in their allowance. They had a $20,000 allowance. We spent half of that.
For key construction up at the top, it's all to be completed by October 1st, and that includes, right? The kitchen, cafeteria, all that stuff will be done by October?
Correct. All of that is to be completed by
You
October
didn't say
1st.
excluded, I just
I'm
wanted to
sorry,
make sure
yeah,
that
yeah,
includes.
that's, everything there is supposed to be completed. Really, at the elementary school, our goal is by October 1st is to be out of that building. And we'll coming back for punch list.
Thank you.
This week in particular, we're looking at acoustic wall pads that are going on in the cafeteria, window replacements, And then there's going to be, the final thing are shades, window shades that will be going up in that space. Phase 1B.2 is the high school and the bus garage. The GC, there's Doppel Construction, that's here. Contract value to date is $1,005,464. Cistern has been completed, gas line completed. Main office right now, we're looking to have that completed by the end of this week. We're just waiting on the glazing. And in fact, I was waiting on an email on that today to see when the final delivery on that was going to be. But the goal was by the 25th to have that work completed. We have the alternate, the locker rooms, was actually scheduled to be done next summer. We actually pushed that up. We got that done earlier. Fitness room is ready to be turned over. For next year, for the summer of 2018, we're going to be working on the stage sound, the computer labs, and the kitchen work. Right now, there's $29,500 that's still available in their contract coming into next year. For the HVAC work, you have CB Strain, $486,000 contract. 100% of their work will be completed by 9/22, except for the kitchen upgrades, which they will be back in summer of 2018. We have $15,099 left in their allowance.
What's the kitchen upgrade related to HVAC?
Exhaust. It's minor, yeah, it's exhaust, yeah. And what would also, you'll see that the same thing follows with the middle school. When the HVAC contract comes back, it's for exhaust fans. Duchess Mechanical, the plumbing contractor, again, 100% of the work was completed, that was supposed to be completed for the opening day, except for the kitchen. They'll be back in the summer 2018 for those upgrades. We have $600 left in allowance on that contract. And then we have Hudson Valley Construction and Maintenance, $1.54 million. All work is to be completed by November of this year, except for the kitchen work. And we have $20,337 left in their allowance.
Is any of that data wire that they were pulling? Like if they're putting in an access control system, was the electrical work for that part of this contract?
They had some data, they didn't have all of it. There was some intermingling between them and day automation. So there was, when you look at their contract, there was some change orders that was associated to day's work that we had to get done ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember that conversation.
1B.3 is the middle school. This was the final set of contracts that was awarded. Main office is underway and was operational for the opening of the school. We're scheduled to be completed by October 1st there. The home ec room is scheduled to be turned over by December. We continue to need to be in that space. We're installing ductwork in the attic area, and that work is also going to continue until December. But we wanted, we're going to turn that space over, and that's according to schedule. We will be back in summer of 2018. The toilet rooms were accepted as an alternate, so we're going to be coming back and doing that work. The computer lab was an alternate, and then the kitchen upgrades will be coming back for those. The allowance still built into their contract is $35,165. And again, when I'm mentioning the contract allowances and whatnot, I've taken into consideration all of the asbestos issues that we ran into. This is up to date as of today. It takes into consideration all the changes, and I'm trying to project out and hold everything accountable there. HVAC, DJ heating and cooling, $1,055,000. This contractor is actually ahead of schedule. We had these guys working throughout the year. They were actually able to get the unit vent replacement done during this school year as opposed to, or this summer as opposed to next summer. So we actually jumped ahead with them. They will be back in the summer 2018 for the toilet rooms, computer labs, kitchen upgrades. We have $32,000 left in their allowance that's still available. The plumbing contractor, Duchess Mechanical, $226,200. They were, again, completed with all of their work that was supposed to be completed for the summer. They will be back in the summer of 2018 for the toilet rooms and the kitchen upgrades. We have $8,000 that's left in there, and that's the full allowance. We didn't touch their allowance for any work. The electrical contractor, Castleman Electric, $425,785. On schedule to be completed with the office work and whatnot by October 1st. They will be back summer 2018 for the toilet rooms, computer lab, kitchen upgrades, and we have $8,000 left in their contract. Overview, Phase 1A contracts, 5.220602. We are still holding a $75,000 construction contingency. So that's on top of the allowances that are built into the contract. We still have $75,000 that we're holding in our overall budget. The Phase 1B contracts are at 8.781256. These numbers, again, they all include all of the alternates that were approved as change orders after the bid awards. So these are up to date. We're still holding $300,000 construction contingency for Phase 1B, again, on top of the allowances that are still built into the contracts. Included in the 8.7 is what's been awarded to Day Automation to date of $208,000. To be awarded, we still have a shed. There's some miscellaneous items that I'm still holding money for, $144,000 of contracts that were going to be direct purchases by the district and not bid through us. Incidental costs, I'm holding $3.118 million. Still within that 3.18 is the financing cost. The full financing costs are still built into that figure, which is pretty important. Total project cost to date, 17.265. The approved bond was 17.5. The running balance is 294,000. Remaining allowances through all the contracts that I just went through is 285,000. And then we also have 75,000 and $300,000 in contingency. That's the overall budget. That's big picture, looking at where we are with contracts.
What's included in the incidentals? Just curious.
Incidentals are your architect's fees, your construction management fees, any testing, required inspections, your hazardous material monitoring, and testing, surveying work that was done. Any printing costs, and again, there's a significant dollar in there for financing.
Thank you.
And I have incidental reserve in there of about $95,000 as well, that's built into that. The alternates from the latest bid, I did not include the first bid, which included the tennis courts and the front circle. These were from the last set of bids. What we're looking at is the roofing across every school. We did not select any of the roofing. There's close to $900,000 in roofing that was not selected. Computer labs, we did select those at the middle school and high school, so those are going to be done. The electrical generators, we did do the one at the elementary school. We still have the middle school and bus garage as options. Toilet rooms at the middle school, that was accepted. That's going to be done next year. High school team locker rooms, that was completed this year. You guys accepted that. The LED lighting at the stage was not accepted. The corridor lockers here at the high school were not accepted. And then the bus garage lift was not accepted. So these are still, I would say, if you're looking at additional monies, these are still things to potentially look at or chew on for work that we could still either bid or see if the contractors, if you're still looking to keep one of the numbers for the roofing, we can still go back to the contractor and see if they're willing to hold that number for it to be installed in 2018. Are you going to look at other alternatives for roofing? I think right now is probably a good time to start that conversation, and planning for 2018 and where we're going to be. So again, that's the review of the alternates, and then just some pictures. Completed, kitchen.
That's the line, they were expecting it when we did our walkthroughs. So.
Yeah, the serving line. So that's a it's a great shot. the elementary school cafeteria. Again, we have the wall pads, the acoustic wall pads that still need to come. We're gonna be doing the stage curtain there. Front entrance to the middle school, I just picked some photos just to, I know you guys have been walking around the buildings, but that's a nice shot. Middle school interior work, office areas. That's a great shot of the high school offices here. You'll notice there's no glass here. That's going to be the final component that needs to still be installed. That turned out really nice. High school locker rooms completed. So again, any questions? I sort of ran through it. There's a lot of stuff there, but
Lou, could you email a copy of this, folks?
absolutely. Yep.
And next time you give a report, can we see what the initial allowance amount was for each contract
Sure.
and what is remaining?
Sure.
Okay.
I can give a full summary of that.
So on,
Just
on
go.
the sheet where the alternatives were, we had ones that were selected, ones that weren't selected, Owen. Is that bringing us from what we went out to the community with? And this is the listing of things? Does that bring it back to that complete list, or is there still stuff from that list that were?
I think we did almost everything by the time we get done, except the tennis courts and the paving of blue.
Was
Have
that
to
in
go
the
back.
initial, was that in the?
I think that was part of this. We weren't really, when you do those scope communications, you try to keep them more general than specific because of this very reason. When the bids come in, there are some things that you might have adopted in your scope as a board that will not be able to be done, or you would have to prioritize the work. And that, when we went through selecting the alternates, I know that there was quite a bit of discussion at
I'm
that
not sure I
time
understand
on what things.
Her question, are you asking, is the stuff on here the difference between 25 million and 17.5 million?
No,
Oh.
but from the 17.5 million to what we are getting. Because I know there was a lot of discussion after the first phase of, we were over budget and now,
Construction costs and elevation.
Well, I think we can go through the list of what we could do is go through the scope document that you finalized in August of 2016, I believe it was, and what's been completed and what wasn't done.
Probably to answer your question fully, out of the 17.5 million, all those items that are not selected list were part of that 17.5 million.
right, I'm just wondering if that makes it an all-inclusive list. And if it does, I think it's a great summary in terms of what we were asking for, what I at least was asking for to look at and to see from where we started with the community of saying this is kind of the things that we're looking to go out with and where we are now. So I appreciate
And
this overview.
don't
So it's
forget, we
very helpful.
pulled out some of the, or we added to that some of the smart school money that
Correct,
we're gonna receive.
yes.
And with that being said, where are we with the integration of our phase 1B on all three of the campuses with day automation for secure access and the access points and all that? Are we providing new hardware for day automation, or is that part of their scope? I mean, how's that all fit in?
It's on both. On the security side, when you look at the security vestibules, we had them come in and coordinate with the GC so that we could get that work done. There are other areas in the building, they're responsible for all the cameras and whatnot, but on the security vestibules, they had to be involved with the coordination there because of
Access controls and locks.
the ratings. The ratings of those pieces, it comes as an assembly, so it's.
All right, what about the perimeter doors? How's that all?
From what I've been told, everything was that was all coordinated through with Day and each one of the GCs on all the perimeters.
So,
For what the GC owed. Outside of that, I don't know, I can't answer for the Day stuff outside of what the GC owed us with the new doors on the exterior.
okay, so the new doors at the middle school are all prepped for the new access control,
That's
all
what
the
I've been-
card swipes and all that?
That's what I've been told, correct.
And what part of day automation follows now with those new doors that have already been installed? Just the card readers?
It's just a card, it's,
Towers there and everything, and all the
Everything.
hardware?
we had to pay a change order to Dodge Valley to actually bring power to certain locations. It was never part of their contract.
That makes sense.
Wasn't that in the original scope to provide power?
It was taken, when Day was brought on, there were certain portions that were taken out of their scope to be made part of Day's package. But then when we went out to bid, there were certain things that were not there. And one of them is specifically the power. I remember the conversation going back and forth with the architects and engineers on that particular one.
And do we know where we are with smart school money?
The last time when we checked, we still haven't gone into the review.
So we're not,
We're not able yet to purchase the camera.
besides the camera, how about access control to all the exterior doors on all three campuses? Where are we there? We're nowhere near, Mr. Miller, you're shaking your head no.
All part of smart schools.
Yeah, so that's all part of an application for the Smarter Schools Bond. There's still other monies that you haven't applied for, correct?
That
Well,
is
there's
correct.
280-something thousand.
208.
That's right.
Eight.
And we had 667 of the 1.13 that is going to be applied to the security. I believe it's about another $500,000 that was left
Right.
unassigned for any work. The board wanted to have money available to either purchase more equipment in the future or perhaps do some other kind of work.
Right, and to get to that money, we would have to put in
You'd have to
another
submit.
application.
You'd have to submit
Okay.
another proposal of what you
So
would
it's
do
not
with that
all
work.
Yeah,
No,
no, only
no.
the 600K that addresses day
No,
automation work.
because there's not a plan in
Security
place
and access
yet
control
for that
throughout.
remaining $500,000.
It sounds, I'll tell you, I'm happy with this presentation. I'm sure you want more
Lou,
specifics, Al, but this is looking really good. Anybody else shares my enthusiasm?
You spoke about second shift work. Are we having oversight over second shift work? I believe I saw DJ Heating doing second shift work at the middle school.
Yeah, we've been running, trying to run both shifts. So Ken will come here during the day and then he comes in at night. So we're splitting
What's
the
still
shifts.
going on in day shift while school's in operation?
Today he was here with the contractors reviewing the toilet rooms. He was also looking at there's the mezzanine steel and access. So there's always something going on that, contractors are requiring access to the building to review existing conditions. Today he spent a good amount of time just reviewing, issues with the mezzanine and access to the mezzanine.
So when you have daytime shift work, you're not providing nighttime shift work supervision or oversight?
He's coming in and he's spot checking on the teams. So it's not full-time.
And
We
did
can't
that-
do full-time on
Did that occur
both.
all spring?
What's that?
Did that occur all spring during second shift work when we did window installation?
There was a mix of that as well. It was the best approach to not going back and asking the district for more money to manage two shifts.
Well, what was going on in the day shift during the spring work? What was occurring?
I
think
can
we
get a
only
list.
we only did window installation and we did elementary school upgrades in the offices and such, and that was all second shift work.
I can get you a log done. I think that was
No,
already,
I'm
I
just
think it was
asking a
already
question. I mean,
handed in. I think there was a question on this, and I think we did hand in a log that was what was being done during first and second.
Some of the office work in the elementary school was going on during the day.
Yeah, because we were coming out of the ground.
When you moved out, they started working. And I know there was some question about whether or not this would be disruptive. And I don't think we got any parent complaints about that, did we? So that is one area I do know that there was day work, but I don't know about across the board, but that.
Major noises all ended before students got there, except in the lower kitchen, the month of June, some of that was going on.
Just two other items. So we know that we have really not selected the roofing because that's part of a larger discussion addressing larger concerns with the roof. I think we had talked to Louise Lynch a couple meetings ago. So the idea was, what is the debt retirement and what amounts were we potentially going to bond at little or no impact to the taxpayer? So that was an analysis that was needed, and then where do those numbers size up with that amount? So just wanted to keep that conversation going, that's one. The second one, bit of an offshoot, but I know that the weight room, totally redone, so it looked fabulous. Is there any plan for what goes back in there? It's similar to the see that locker room is nice, those team lockers, and I know these lockers here are still up for question. But I don't know if there was a thought given to the equipment, or is there a plan on what we're trying to achieve in that space? Pete?
There was a considerable conversation about that, and a plan was put forth between athletics and the phys ed staff, and the phys ed staff actually drew up a plan and determined what equipment was going back in, how it was going, because we want to make sure everything fit and was adequately spaced.
Okay.
And only moved once. And the plan, a very, very professional plan was actually devised that we would be putting all that stuff back in there on Friday morning.
So there's no new equipment, it's all of our existing equipment?
All our existing equipment, minus some equipment that we are not putting back in.
They're going to use that as an instructional space also for different types of activities related to the physical education program. So
Right.
it's not just going to be a training space for athletes. It will remain, it will still be used to be that, but it'll also be used for, I think there's been conversation about doing yoga and other types of activities
that's
that
great.
can go in a smaller space, while other things are being done in the gymnasium, if I'm recalling correctly.
That's correct.
Is
There
can we
was
see
quite-
that plan?
there
I'm
was-
just curious what they're planning on in that space.
I did see the schematics, Mr. Harris shared it with me. I was able to see that on habit. It looks impressive.
We can
Yeah, let's see if we could take a look at that. So I was, again, when you renew spaces, it's a good time to take a look at what your equipment needs are. And if they're, age, then you consider aging some of those out, and there might be some resources for them. So that's all I'm thinking. Great.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you, I think this was the
I
overview.
also say I gotta thank the administration. We did go in and we tore your buildings up, and you guys were really good when we came back. And Pete, thank you for, your support throughout. His guys were great as well, so we couldn't have done it without everybody working together, because there was a lot going on, so.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
That's great.
Thank you, Will. Okay, Lisa, you're ready to give the oath for our student rep?
I'd like to introduce you all. This is Dean Riley. He will be our student rep for the 2017-18 school year. So thank you, Dean. I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand, and you can repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I support the Constitution of the United States
I do solemnly swear that I support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my position
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my position
as student representative for the Board of Education
as student representative for the Board of Education
of the Highland Central School District according to the best of my abilities.
of the Highland Central School District according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, Dean, and thank you. At this time, perhaps he can do his student rep updates, or just basically say a few words to the board. Introduce yourself. Thank you.
It's getting late.
Sure. So, hello, I first want to say that I am deeply honored and humbled to have been elected as this year's Student Board of Education representative. I also wanted to promise that I will do my absolute best and strive to bring informative and accurate information, to bring a student perspective to all board discussions, and to uphold the honor with prestige and high admiration. In addition, I hope that all of my own and students' suggestions are taken into consideration, as we all have the same objective, to improve our school. I'd also like to comment, I have recently been having discussions with my peers and other classmates in the school district about some of the upgrades. First and most, I think the new office creation of having people that are guests enter through the office before they enter the school was a great idea, in addition to the school district, to keep our schools safe and secure. Also, I think many students are excited about a new E-wing bathroom. They are
Won't
waiting.
miss the pink and blue?
Or wood toilet petition?
Right. So we're excited for that one, and that's another question, is they're also wondering when that will be open.
Should be within the next few days.
Probably tomorrow.
Okay, okay. That's great.
Look at that, you can say you made it happen.
Yeah, there
Be done tomorrow.
Another suggestion from students was, we like the new gray walls instead of some golden blue, which was not good for backdrops when they were taking pictures. But we do miss a little of our paintings and murals and some of our school spirit that we had with the artworks that we had throughout the school. So a suggestion was maybe to get some tapestries that could be changed several years, art club. So to sort of commission some projects throughout the school that we bring some life into our, now just gray walls. Another concern that students have brought to me was the study halls in the cafeteria. Not many students, some enjoy it, you have a lot of friends that you have the ability to, but it's difficult. I think we need to make a sort of program or whatever it is that students have an opportunity to get places where they can sit down in more quiet scenarios to get studying done, and have access to computers, because many of our classes involve online work currently with Schoology. So I would suggest maybe somehow figuring out where we can, although we might need the cafeteria and study halls, give students more of an ability to allow more students to access other classrooms during those times. Oh, and then the final thing was for the locker rooms. We were talking about lockers, and students, I think, at high school they don't really use the lockers because they're very slim and small, and you can fit a jacket and that's it. But I think we're also used to that by now, so I don't know if we created new lockers, how effective that would be in students using them. However, we also got rid of the bigger locker rooms for the girls' athletic room in their locker room, which now they don't have a spot to put their athletic equipment throughout the day. And last year there was a new school policy with the gymnasiums that the phys ed teachers, due to security reasons, made us put our backpacks in lockers in the locker room. But now many students don't have enough room to fit their equipment, their backpack and everything in that one locker, while the girls were allowed to have that more space when they had those other yellow lockers, I believe. So maybe the idea of some creation of lockers that are bigger for students to fit their athletic equipment might be a good idea.
So you don't think the hallway lockers are a worthy investment if we were to proceed in replacing them?
Well, there's a point when maybe there is worthy investment because we got rid of the ones in the gymnasium, so now many kids don't have the room to put their athletic equipment. However, I don't know the girls' locker room personally, so was that, the yellow lockers, was that put into another separate space like the other, like the men's locker room was? I'm not positive. Because if it was, then maybe they could put their stuff in a room and that can be set up and they can get it after school. But if they don't have that space, how are they can't fit their lacrosse stick in a blue locker that's smaller. Or their big bags, they have all their changing and everything that they have to partake in to play their sport. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean, and congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, acceptance of reports. Be resolved, the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, approves and acknowledges reviewing the following reports: our general fund budget revenue status reports, which are the treasurer's report for August 2017, our general fund, our school lunch fund, our special aid fund, and our capital fund. Can I have a motion, please? Moved by Sue, second by Tom. Discussion?
Deborah, can you just remind me again why at this time of year we show such a large unencumbered balance like for the August?
It's early in the school year, and I did, all of the salary codes may not have been fully encumbered yet. There's some staff movement. So primarily due to the fact that we're early in the school year, especially with now our full staff back, you'll see that start to tighten up over the next month or so.
So that's just a normal course?
Yes. It's not unusual to see
Okay.
a large unencumbered balance in the beginning of the school year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Under curriculum and instruction, our principal's report, Joel?
We had a very smooth opening week or two. The kids are happy. We've got a lot of movement in the building with the offices. We're not moved back yet. We're waiting for some final work to be done there. So there were some classes that would have been in the space that we're currently using as offices. So there was some shifting around. So I just want to acknowledge those teachers that they're being very patient with us. They have spaces, but they were thinking they would be back in their original spaces for the beginning of the school year, but they've been very flexible. We're looking forward to the office being finished so that we can get everything moved back down there. Kathleen and I think we're infecting each other right now. She went home sick today, and I'm starting to feel it because we're all in that one little petri dish of an office. So, but the school looks great. The construction work that's been done looks incredible. The computer lab furniture arrived yesterday, so that should be up to speed very shortly once all of the furniture gets arranged. Our technology teaching assistant has not been working in the lab during the first few weeks. She's been pushing into classrooms because the furniture wasn't here, but it just arrived, so we're looking to have that lab up and running in the next week or so.
What's that lab getting? Is it new furniture, new PCs? What's the plan for
New
those
furniture. There's still a question about what the machinery is going to be. There's some wiring conversations that still need to be had. And we have a lot of portable devices, but some of the ports on the floor, if we put too many computers into those ports, there's not enough power in certain spots, is what I'm told. So we're looking at, with the help of Mr. Miller and Mrs. Potash, how we're best going to utilize that. The whole idea of that lab, though, is that it's movable space, that it's not going to be set up and it's just going to stay that way the whole year.
Right, it's a flexible learning environment.
So it depends on what goes on. We have the iPad carts, the laptops. So
Are they giving you some 80-inch Interactive whiteboards and
Yeah, the
stuff,
interactive whiteboards, there's some discussion now, I guess somehow it got lost in translation that it was gonna be a board on each side with a dual projector so that no matter where the kids were, they'd be able to see that board. So that wasn't done when school first started, but the room is ready for those boards to go up now. So technology is working on getting those boards in.
So it's still a projector based and not an interactive?
Honestly, I
Don't know that.
there's been some different discussions with that, so I think the technology is moving faster than what we originally had planned, so I think they're gonna be more like this, rather than the suspended thing from the
That's
ceiling.
what I wanna hear, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be like just a smart board.
Right.
In the traditional sense that it's.
Right, interactive
Yeah.
boards, okay.
So, we ran kindergarten orientation a little differently this year. We had it all on one afternoon. There were some pros and cons to that. One of the cons was we had all our teaching staff back on the campus at the same time, so parking was a little bit of a problem that day. But I think the parents enjoyed the presentation. I know the students were with me and with the kindergarten teachers, and they had a great experience. We had full classes, whereas in the past we did half the kids in the morning, half the kids in the afternoon. It was typically on a day when the rest of the staff wasn't there. So we're looking at maybe doing full classes, but maybe 2 sessions, so that it's 3 classes at a time, so it cuts down on the parking issue. So we tried something new. We had all the parents at one time. The cafeteria was a little overcrowded, I thought. It was a little warm that day, but we had one crier during orientation, and the next day he came in and he was everybody's buddy.
Was that a kid or a parent?
That was a kid. No, we definitely had some of the parent tears the next, and we always have those on the first day. They come to take pictures of the kids getting off the bus, and then you have to escort them down okay, it's time for you to go, so that your children have that experience in school. Kindergarten is off to a great start, and the building looks great. Our numbers changed slightly since last Thursday. We had 2 kids move out and 2 kids move in, so the numbers are exactly the same, but the numbers are a little different in 2 grade levels. I think it's 2nd and 5th, up by 1 and down by 1. Any questions?
In the cafeteria, the infills that are going where those knockouts are in the wall, where the tables used to go into the wall?
Yes.
Is that for soundproofing?
It's part of the project, so yes.
For acoustics.
Yep.
Acoustics, right?
And those tables haven't gone into the walls since I've been
No, I
there.
know, but I'm just saying, so that'll help that. The new floor in the cafeteria,
Mm-hmm.
that softer floor, less noise.
Definitely less noise.
So once you get those panels off.
I think with the panels. And right now, if it's early on, so the kids, the first couple of weeks of school, the noise isn't necessarily as loud as it will be as the year goes on, once they get more comfortable in the space. But yeah, we definitely noticed. I noticed it on kindergarten orientation when all the parents were in there, and we were talking to them that was definitely, it was marked difference from the year before.
Any other questions for Joel?
And just thank you for your patience as we move through this capital. I know it's difficult for you and staff, and concerns always pop up because of that.
Just to follow up, and this is for Mr. Miller. I thought I heard you say something about insufficient power in the computer lab for some of the devices,
He
or
didn't say that.
didn't say that.
I don't know what I'm talking about, I guess. That was something that I heard. I don't.
My concern there, if that's true, and we also have an issue in the cafeteria at the elementary school with dishwasher being out of service, a brand new dishwasher being out of service for power issues. Is it being addressed with our design professionals?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay. I just want to make sure because.
Are our design professionals responsive to those? All right, reach out.
We have been, and I've been in email contact with them, letting them know that we're not happy, and we expect it to be remediated, and we're going to negotiate on how that's going to be paid for.
Believe me, Joel, I wouldn't put you on.
No, no.
I'm
I'm like, uh-oh, what did I do?
These issues that
Yes.
we as the board are gonna hear from the community.
Yeah.
With the rumor
That's
mill.
not-
Might as well have it here and.
I mean, the one thing that I will say is that the original power that was there when everything was up
You had
against the
power
walls.
poles, didn't you?
No power poles, but it was all against the walls. That power has not been removed. I mean, the goal is not to push the computers back against the wall. But as we start
Okay,
using
the new floor
mobile
out.
devices, they're not gonna need to be plugged in while the students are necessarily using them, because they're gonna be moving them to different spots. I think there's 5 ports, but that doesn't mean that's necessarily the way the furniture is always going to line up. So, you know, if they're using an iPad, that doesn't need to be plugged in while they're using the iPad.
There's some adaptation to the number of plugs that are in the floor and how we're gonna make that work with the number of computers we have. So it's not that there's not enough power to run the stuff, it's just a configuration of the quad boxes and whatever
Not
stuff.
enough for the devices.
How many circuits?
But they got them against the wall.
I don't know that right now, I know it's more than.
Okay, so whatever.
All right, Dan?
Good evening again. On this past Friday, we had our first big PBIS event. It's always such a pleasure to sit back and watch the kids get so involved and the teachers get so involved and have our PE coaches set up all these races where kids have to do something and they're racing teachers, and then the teachers get disqualified because they didn't follow the rules. And the kids win the race, and they did, actually, the kids followed the rules, but the teacher didn't quite do what they were supposed to, so it's interesting to watch, and the kids are all just hooting and hollering and having a great time. It went really well. And the other comment I'll make about the thinking project, there's the data that we went through tonight is one indication, but then you have these other events that you see, and the word went right out of my head, what's not data, but okay, well, it'll come back at some point. A teacher in our building received a text from an ex-student who's in college. And what it was the comment that that student's teacher, ELA teacher in college, wrote on their composition paper. And it said, you did a great job supporting with evidence your argument based on what you've read and what you brought to your own evidence from your own experience to this paper. And it just goes to show that we really are on the right track with this work. And you know, that that it's carrying over into what our students are doing.
Anecdotal.
And thank you, that's the word. It's an anecdotal piece of evidence that shows we're on the right track. Thank you, Sarah. I knew you'd come up with it. Okay. Questions? We had quite a few students move in and out. That was interesting, but dropped us under 400. We were over 400, but now we're just under it. So, any other questions?
You had a comment on there about master scheduling, just
Yes.
looking at alternative. What are alternatives? Just because, like, in my mind, I can't.
Yeah, our current schedule is a period by period schedule, right? Bell rings, you go to the next period. Every period's 42 minutes long, and you go through the day like that. An alternative is maybe a block schedule, where some periods may be 80 minutes long or 75 minutes long, but some might be shorter, and right. So, and then you free up different things at different times. For instance, in one idea we're looking at, and the comment I make is, I have a kid that we discover in the middle of the school year really could use AIS math to work on a specific area they're struggling in. I can't get that kid into an AIS class because I don't have a teacher available that time. I don't have, I'd have to completely rearrange their schedule to do that. It's not something we'll do. But in this schedule, that all lines up at one time. And I can move kids in and out of that in a much more flexible way. It's a discussion right now, and we're beginning it. It's a long discussion. It would be a significant change, right? And there would be lots of teacher training to go on with it. If we get there and we decide that's where we want to go in the long run. Okay, so I will keep you informed about it because there'd be lots involved. Okay.
Does your guidance staff work during the summer at all?
Yes, they put in about 10 days. Well, I have two people, right? One part-time, one full-time. One puts in 10 days, one puts in about 5 days.
Oh.
So the other 5 days at the high school.
On the sixth grade orientation, there were just some concerns brought forward about like the wait time for schedules, and then I know that some students didn't have their schedule available then, so.
We
Just a
unfortunately.
question I had from that.
Unfortunately, we had we had several students move in at the last minute, and we didn't get those schedules. We didn't get their packets, so that we couldn't create the schedule. And those, you know, they were coming in on the superintendent's conference days, but there was just kind of some other things going on with the construction. It really limited some of our ability to get in there and do some of that work. And there were some other concerns that we would try to deal with.
I appreciate it, I appreciate it. I mean, we all work with limitations and, thank you.
Anything else?
Thanks, Dan. Bill, you're gonna speak for?
Sure. Good evening. I'm happy to report that the high school also had a very smooth opening the past few weeks, and we look forward to continuing that this year. I have two additions to the board report that was submitted. Last Monday, Highland High School observed a moment of silence at 8:46 a.m. That was on 9/11 to honor all the lives that were lost on that day 16 years ago. Also, earlier today, 42 juniors, along with their social studies teacher, attended a lecture at SUNY Ulster that was given by Russell Sage Professor Stephen Schechter. The topic was federalism, and it was for Constitution Day, which was last Sunday, 9/18. And there were mixed reviews upon return. I was standing at the door as they walked in, so depending who I asked, I had mixed reviews. Some said it was interesting, some said somewhat interesting, and the teachers also had mixed reviews. But overall, here was a great experience for the juniors.
Any questions for Bill?
Thank you.
Director of Transportation, Doug. Reading your report, you recommend that the district looks into a daycare busing policy. Is there a reason why you're asking for us to do that?
It would help us have a much more orderly opening of school from the busing perspective. As of last week, about 14% of the elementary students have regular afternoon daycare busing arrangements. By regular, I mean each week they're going to a different place, in some cases multiple different places. And that's not counting families that submit requests, notice directly to the school to go to an alternative address, you know, just for a couple of days rather than on an every week basis. So the school is asked to get all these children on the correct bus in the afternoon. It creates a lot of stress for staff, the kids, bus drivers as well, and it does lead to some instances where you know, kids get misplaced, never lost, but might be put on the wrong bus and difficult to find them that afternoon amidst all the commotion of other you know, things going on. So in order to better manage the requests that come to us, I suggest the district implement a daycare transportation policy. The district has the option of providing daycare busing. I think the district has a long history of providing it, so I think the district, you know, is committed to providing it, and the parents need it. We have a responsibility to provide it then, I think, safely and well, and the more requests we get in advance, the more we can enter into our transportation software and share with the schools, so they're relying on written records within the transportation software and have access to in their own computers, rather than on a pile of handwritten notes that can be hard to decipher and keep track of. And there's still going to be some of those handwritten notes that come in at the last minute or in the last hours, but I think we can take big steps towards better and more safely managing daycare busing.
And when you say daycare busing, is it twofold? Is it your formal business daycare centers and someone who has a friend on the other side of town that given day they have to watch their children?
It is twofold. We have half a dozen daycare businesses operating around town. But I would say an equal number of children go to their grandmothers, their aunts, their neighbors on different days of the week, and it really is quite a bit for the school to manage. And the transportation office is now able to do a better job of assisting the school offices, because we've gotten the school offices to use some of our transportation software that they haven't utilized in the past. So that's a step in the right direction, but I think we can do even better. But the state recommends that daycare requests be submitted by April 1st. That's not realistic. So many families are scrambling in late August to put together their daycare transportation plans. But if we can get the bulk of transportation requests, especially the known ones, in early August, and we can already have those plans written into our bus schedules and made known in writing to the school offices. So there's much more certainty about getting the kids on the correct bus in the
Aren't we
afternoon.
collecting that information at the point of registration though? I mean, when you talk about daycare and preschool, you're really looking at your primary population.
It's really not collected during registration.
That can change.
Well, I have a question in terms of that, because from a personal standpoint, when you register a child, there's, I think it's even a green card that states what your transportation requirements are. I know I had submitted that, my transportation hasn't changed since my daughter was 4 months old. So I submitted that on there, but that did not carry over, and I've heard that same case has happened in a few other situations. So I'm just wondering what the policy is and what we do with those green cards when we get them. And just making sure that that process is flowing, because I think I thought I was a one-off, but then when I heard it from a few different instances, it makes you question kind of what the process is there.
When you and I spoke at the kindergarten orientation, I wasn't familiar with your child's arrangements. Your child's arrangements were already part of our daycare busing plans. And when we get lists of students attending the other commercial daycares around town, they usually come to us by the middle of August. I can enter all those plans into our routing software. But the majority of daycare requests come to us on an individual basis, and oftentimes just in the last days of school before the opening. And that avalanche of requests is really beyond our capacity to handle in the last couple of days. There's also so many changes to busing, and the burden falls upon the school staff, especially at the elementary school, to get the kids on the correct bus. And, there'll still be a number of individual paper requests for busing, but the majority of the requests that they can be handled in advance and entered into our routing software, so that plans are in writing clearly and available through the transportation software.
And certainly understood the last minute changes, and certainly maybe a policy of that such, which I don't know what provisions would be in there of what they would look like. But certainly the situation that I was in and a few other situations were exactly the same. The transportation needs were communicated on that green card, but were not correctly entered into that system. So just concerned over that process. So just something you might want to look at to make sure that that information is getting in there appropriately.
Those last minute arrangements, are they coming from the businesses, the students attending the business daycares as well, or is it primarily?
Both. The enrollment of children at the commercial daycares changes, and
I would think you'd have contracts signed well before.
evidently not entirely.
I'll tell you, before we have an internal discussion, I'd love, to gather data on what other school districts do in this capacity, and maybe kind of have the opportunity to look at that.
Sure.
One message the community sent last year was a pretty clear one. They like their transportation and they like their options too, it seems. So I just want to be cautious as we approach transportation.
I don't think it's denying anyone transportation, it's just a question of advance notice of transportation needs.
To what degree can you customize? Sounds like.
And probably the best district to talk to would probably be our neighbor that has their own transportation. Because I don't know how it, and to compare it with what a contract busing company does,
Yeah,
because they could be very
What do
different.
they do, right?
Yeah.
What do they do?
We don't transport to any daycares out of the district, do we?
No, we're not authorized to do so by state regulation.
Who has access to the info finder program? What level staff, or is it even?
The secretarial office staff at the elementary school and middle school have access to it now. At least some of the individuals there do, as well as the assistant in my office. Last year, the assistant didn't utilize it, so there's been some nice expansion of our capacity to respond quickly and accurately to
It's a finite
questions
number
about
of people
daycare.
that has access, right?
I'm sorry?
It's a finite number of people that have
Yes.
access.
Yeah, but I can expand it easily to include more people.
And do you think this is something that really requires a policy shift, or is it really something that we should be more attentive as far as reminding parents to get the information in? And
Well, to provide daycare, the school board should authorize it. And then it's a matter of setting up regulations to control it that we'd be comfortable with. And they're gonna, meet the needs of the family, but while also ensuring that, we're providing safe and orderly school busing for the kids.
I agree, but my point is that I don't anticipate that would actually shift, that we'd have to actually change any policy, but more so just procedure, having the parents more
Higher
aware of
levels of
getting.
communication.
Yeah, whether the green cards, whether it's an issue and the green card's not being filed, or if it's a matter of having to send out repeated reminders to parents, please have your routes addressed by mid-August, or it wouldn't necessarily be a policy shift as much as a communication effort.
That's right, the meat of the matter would be in the regulations that are gonna govern how we administer a daycare busing program. Right now, there are fewer controls than I'd like to see.
Any other questions for Doug? Thank you, Doug. Director of Instructional Data and Assessment, any questions for Jody?
Patrick, on the
Patrick, questions for Patrick? Not gonna let him off the hook. Anything for Patrick? Good, thank you, Patrick. And I just want to say that Mr. Miller and his staff, a well-deserved thank you for your staff, especially going through a summer of instruction on every campus, and their ability to do the best they could in those conditions to make the schools look the way they did on opening day, and I think they deserve a thank you for that. Okay, under personnel. We'll take personnel as a block. Yes.
We made a recommendation going into executive session, there's questions in some of those.
Okay, have a second? Second? Second by Tom. Motion made by Mike, second by Tom. We can take a short break, go into executive session to discuss some personnel issues.
Shouldn't be long.
Okay, can I have a motion to go back into public session? Motion by Heather, second by Ed. Okay, under personnel, do you have an issue with taking personnel as a block from A through F? Good. Okay, can I have a motion, please? Motion by Ed, second by Tom. Opposed? I oppose A. And I would also like to thank Mr. Harris for his years here, both as a teacher and an administrator for a good number of years supporting the Highland Central School District. Okay, so motion carries except for a nay vote on A. Other business and operations, establishment for a foreign language scholarship. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent, approve the establishment of a scholarship fund known as Foreign Language Scholarship as requested to the board at this meeting. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Ed, second by Heather.
Good night.
Discussion? All those in favor?
It just says,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, it just says requested to the board at this meeting, but I,
Oh, it's in the
There's
administrative
documents.
memo.
Yeah.
It's foreign language part of Mr. Keith, that's
On
a
that.
factor. They're extending it for French and Spanish.
Yeah, and the donor
It's more
increased,
money than it used to be.
he increased it so that there's the ability to have a scholarship for both languages.
Thank you.
thank you.
Good night, thank you.
I believe we voted on
Yeah,
that.
6-0.
Okay. Okay, this is Ulster at Wingate. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent, authorizes the attorney, Shaw, Pearlson, May, and Lambert LLP to execute a stipulation of settlement in the tax cert proceeding captioned Wingate of Ulster Incorporated in the Highland Central School District. Further resolved that the board authorize the refund of taxes as required by the terms of this order and judgment in the amount of $15,007.58. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Mike, second by Heather. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. HAA and Highland Central School District proposed contract negotiations amendment. Be it resolved, the Board of Education, based upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent, approves a proposed collective negotiations agreement between Highland Central School District and Highland Administrators Association as presented to the board at this meeting. Can I have a motion, please? Motion by Mike, second by Heather. Discussion?
I want to thank the administrators for recognizing the financial circumstances and with a little give and take on both sides. I sincerely appreciate it.
Any other discussion?
Just like to thank them for everything they do. For our schools and
Go to the
our
court
kids.
board.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Interim superintendent. That's good.
Yes, you're right.
Who's that?
And we haven't been in session for that long, and as you know, I was on vacation last week, so I don't have an awful lot other than to, again, echo what has been said by the principals and also by Alan, that under the circumstances of the ongoing construction, I thought we had an extraordinary opening days with the staff. The welcome back remarks, the group, everyone was enthusiastic and positive and upbeat, and I didn't hear complaining. People went through their mandated trainings with, they paid attention, at least in my session we did. You know, that's one of the rare opportunities to have everyone in the same place, and again, I thought the energy was very, it was exciting. There was a lot of enthusiasm. And Sarah worked with the staff with the poverty simulation the following day to set the stage. And even though people had had a limited amount of time in their classrooms, Sarah reported that they were engaged in the activity and weren't like, I had one eye to the door to get out to get to their classrooms. And again, I think that
Was very
that is
limited.
a hallmark of our staff, is that they do not make the effort, they engage. And I think that we're very fortunate to have people in our classrooms, whether it's in our offices and in our buildings and on our buses, that care so much about our kids. And again, our custodial staff did magic based on what little time they had to clean, wax, polish. I know that some of them were upset it wasn't up to their usual high standards, but in my opinion, for whatever that is worth, they really did magic, and we made sure we thanked them all for that. And lastly, I think, Alan, you might have received it as board president, Vivian Lanzarone, one of our Highland residents, and unfortunately a parent who lost a child a number of years ago to an overdose, is hosting the premiere of a video that she and other parents of children who also unfortunately fell victim to their addiction. She's having that at Buttermilk Falls at the event barn. It's on September 28th, which is a Thursday evening. She has asked me to speak as an opening, because we've built a relationship, and she knows that we've been working and training in this area. I don't recall the start time. I think
6:30. I believe it's 6:30. I was gonna,
Is the
you know,
public
get
invited?
hold of.
Yes, it's,
Oh, okay.
it's, but.
Well, it's limited, very limited, I
It
believe,
did, yes.
according to the invitation.
Yes,
Oh.
she plans
Oh,
to
okay.
go public with her video, and she wants schools to use it, so she
Okay.
invited the superintendent, she's invited
Oh,
board
okay.
members, you're right. About, her plans are eventually to have it,
Right.
available to the public.
That was on my list for tonight, who would like to go, because I'm gonna give her a call tomorrow to tell her. That's the evening, that's also the evening that Dr. Corey's gonna be here having the community open forum. Like he said, he doesn't want us involved in that, so there's no conflict there. So if you do wanna go, let me know this evening, or, you know, by tomorrow morning sometime, and I'll call Vivian. Heather and I both sat through her original one, that one evening, and it's powerful, and it's you know, something that you listen to, and you think about, you know, it could be us, it could be one of our friends, it could be one of our family members, so it's touching, and it's really powerful, so I recommend, that we go to that if you can. I mean, it's up to you guys, I know there's a lot going on in our lives, but just confirm before we leave tonight, and I'll make sure. And I'm sure, you know, one more is not gonna, last minute, I can reach out to them.
She'll
Yeah.
accept. And for, she wants to use this also as a springboard, and I think if, as many of you who can attend would be valuable, because at some point, her ask of me and of us is to, now how do we get this information into the hands of our students, and what, you know, our staff, and how we're going to utilize these parents, their story, to better educate our students about the dangers of even ever trying, especially the heroin. She has some goals that she wants to accomplish with the video that they've created.
I think that's great. I think the more we can get into the hands of students, the better off.
Just one.
Yeah. I mean, that night, I know there wasn't, the turnout that night wasn't that great, so I mean,
Yeah,
anything we
there
can
wasn't enough
continue
parents,
to
so we
try
had
to
to-
get out there and get participation in.
Did you were there too?
No, I couldn't make that, I wanted to be there.
So we're going to have
This is one in the
further,
high school, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
we're going to have further dialogue about, maybe we have parents come to a screening of it before we show it to their children. That might be one way to,
Yeah.
you know, get the parents to have to sit and watch it and face what is out there.
I think the parents are gonna be a huge aspect of that, I think that's the primary aspect.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot more to come with that, we hope. That's all I have.
Sarah?
Well, we've been focusing a lot on doing that presentation, and really taking that information and how we're going to, mobilize, I guess I'll say, throughout the school year, and, starting to set up the plans for the after school. I had a meeting today with, Kathleen Sickles and Joel, myself, and our, content specialist from BOCES at the elementary school to really lay out our plan for the Teachers College Readers Workshop for the year. So we've been doing a lot of that kind of work. So I can talk about more of that in October.
This presentation will be on the, you're gonna be putting it on the agenda?
Sorry.
The
Putting-
minutes.
Oh, on their
Yeah.
website? Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
yes, we will
Yes.
share it with,
You have to just
Lisa.
scan it to me and I'll get it,
And if you could convey our appreciation to the faculty
absolutely.
of all the hard work, we do recognize it.
Thank you very much. I will definitely send that along.
I'll get this.
All right, any questions for Sarah? Thank you,
That's
Sarah.
how long that.
Okay, under Board of Education, new business, any new business?
I did just want to bring up, I know I issued a letter, gave a letter to Mr. Barone this evening about a donation I had heard about, so I just want to kind of just make that known, and then if we feel it's important enough to just communicate back to those folks. But I just, without having to read that out, the short of it is that there was some equipment in disrepair, I think the headsets for the football team, and the coach, thinking it was like an electrical issue, brought that to a local electrician. And in finding more about that, that electrical contractor, who's Mike and Sharon Serini, ended up buying a whole new setup for that team. So, I found out about that and I wrote a letter to the board just informing them. But I think you might want to take a look at that. Do we have to formally accept it? Is it already? So that's why Al's got the letter and that'll travel through and.
Yeah, it should be on the agenda, we typically do
All right, so that's
accept
why.
the donations, because then that signals that it's become our district property. And we also want to thank them publicly,
Thank you.
Maybe we'll send
the
Yes, yeah, I'll-
the donation.
Will that be the letter, or will we draft another letter?
I think we'll draft another one.
Yeah,
Might
they'll-
even,
yeah.
ask them to come in, might be, might not.
I saw him last
Something-
night.
Oh, did you?
Saw Mike last night,
Something that significant, I think.
It is.
It's a large sum of money.
and he told me the story about how it went down, and it was on the phone with
Originally,
the person,
Right.
the company.
Yeah.
Deal, I mean,
He got him the next day in time for the game.
Unbelievable.
Really?
Yes. Generosity and
Overnighted.
support, and that's not the only thing.
Paid for, overnighted,
Really?
in time for the next game.
That's-
That came, the game the next day.
I'm glad somebody makes it happen.
That's
Yeah.
pretty remarkable, I
So
mean,
talk about partnerships,
Yes.
good stuff.
great, so, okay.
Okay, any other new business? Under old business, our superintendent search, it's underway. On the website is a survey that we're hoping that, staff and community members are actively looking at it and filling it out and sending it in so we can tally all that. And Dr. Corey will come back to us.
I want to thank Dan, because I know they're doing this at all the open houses, but I was at the middle school open house, and he really made a point to highlight that and encourage participation, so thank you.
Hopefully it happens, I'd love to see that.
I've been getting a
They're
lot of
filling them
feedback
out.
from people.
Yeah,
that
we're
they've-
good.
from
We could
staff.
see it
Good
coming.
news.
As I passed out to you, Dr. Corey sent me the brochure that's going to go out. Just, read through it, see if there's anything that you feel should be changed. Let me know beforehand. And as we discussed at one point in time, the salary range that you see here on the last fold That's in there, and when the timeline is, so it's not that far off, October 27th. Like I said earlier, the community forum is next Thursday, the 28th. Dr. Corey will be in earlier on, meeting with all the stakeholders, the administrators, the unions, union leadership, and such. So, an opportunity for them to give some feedback. So, like you said, he really doesn't want us to participate in that. He'll come forward with all that information. So I think we're moving in that direction. Any questions in regards to this?
Are we putting, regarding the community forums, are we gonna put out a message to all of our?
We can do a robocall.
I saw, there's a notice on Facebook.
I know Holly's
Last
starting
night or-
social
There's been a
media
few-
communication.
Yeah.
This is one that we want everybody to, blitz it, so everybody know that it's available, and if they don't participate or not, we can say which one.
Alright, I'll do that. I'll just read Holly's thing that we put on Facebook.
That's
What's
always
that?
good.
Right.
Just looking at
some
some of the supporting documents here, under miscellaneous.
Yeah,
Open them
yeah.
up, and I recognize.
There's like three of them were old
Huh.
backwards.
No.
Three of them were old backwards under this.
Yeah, it's from the.
Oh.
Yeah,
From
they're
there.
from
Oh,
prior to the
okay,
tenure.
that
must have just
been transferred, that's just,
never on my part.
Play through.
Oh, okay.
That,
Yeah.
might have just
Sorry about that.
transferred down.
There's only one
Yeah,
that's
thank
transferred.
you. It's, yeah, that's just,
All right,
Posting machine.
the only other thing I wanted to say earlier, Dan, and it was part of my opening day remarks back at the beginning of September. Please try to communicate to your staff that we would like them here at some meetings to be able to communicate. And I think this is a good board that can interact with staff and be productive and work as a team towards, a common goal. So, please get that back to
Continue to do that.
tell Joel and Peter the same thing, that I would like to see staff members, Mary Ann's here all the time, but we want to see more faces.
We love seeing you.
Friends.
Mary.
She wants some friends.
And I think, we,
She needs company. Sit there alone.
and one of the ways that we've been able to get, and have that happen in the past, and maybe you're looking for something less formal now, and is, we would invite staff in to talk about what they're doing, just gives the opportunity for some interactions.
Yeah, I just
More
want them to
supportive.
realize that, they can speak out, we're
Yeah,
not-
the concern is more than dog
No,
and pony shows.
I
together.
Unfiltered.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand that.
I think it's not a board with a vengeance or a.
Well,
Yes,
and I'll pass that along to the union leadership as well.
okay, open the meeting up to public comment.
Dan?
Just a couple things.
Close public comment.
Dan?
Oh, Dan, sorry.
that was it,
That was it? I didn't get, okay. Just two things real quick. I appreciate the effort working together and resolving the contract, getting that settled, and your support throughout all of that for what we do. We feel it, we know it, and it helps us get our job done. So that said, and then also want to recognize Mr. Harris. He's been here for a long time, and as a member of our unit, and his inspiration, his leadership has been substantial, and we appreciate it, and I just want to recognize that for him. We'll miss him. I know he's moving on to something he's going to love to do. I absolutely get that, and good for him, but we will certainly miss him.
Thank you, Dan. All right, motion to go into executive session to discuss some personnel issues. Motion by Mike, second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Thank you.
Safe ride, everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, so-
I have it, I'm
Looking forward to